Okay, so that leads us to now number 2, Roman numeral number 2 on our worksheet for week 6.2. Don't worry, we will come back to the de jure pontificio versus de jure divino debate in the next couple of lecture sessions. So, number 2 here on your worksheets. If you remember, we emphasized that during the First Council of Constantinople, 381, the year 381, the second ecumenical council in the history of the Catholic Church, among other things, the point was raised and mentioned that the Holy Spirit proceeds, and all of you, or most of you, responded, out of the Father and the Son. Wrong. No. Remember that? That's not what the First Council of Constantinople in 381 said. It said the Holy Spirit proceeds ex patre, out of the Father. So how in the world is it that those of you who are formerly or still practicing Roman Catholics, after you have imbibed the pearls of spiritual wisdom proclaimed to you through a homily or a sermon, when you recite the so-called creed, why is it that you say, we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, blah, 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 who proceeds from the Father and the Son? This is the so-called, in Latin, Filioque Clause. Filioque, and Filio, the Son. Now, the introduction of this clause, the Filioque Clause, we already have recorded in documentation from the 5th and 6th centuries, primarily in the ancient Roman province of Iberia, Spain. You will recall from the readings that now Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne makes a great deal of this, the incorporation of the Filioque Clause, imposing its use not only in what will soon become Roman Catholic churches, but also in what will soon become Eastern Orthodox churches. We're still one at this point, right? But in the Latin-speaking West and in the Greek-speaking East, not paying any mind or attention or heed or respect to various traditions. This is going to lead to the first formal schism, rupture in this oneness of the worldwide political assembly of Christ, the oneness of the Catholic Church, to which we're coming briefly. And it occurs in the year 1054. There's something called the Phocian or Photian schism or rupture that occurs already in the 9th to 10th centuries, but fast forwarding it, you will see that as you do the readings in more detail. Just fast forward it to the year 1054. It had absolutely, and to this day, it did not have then, and it has nothing today to do with any theological or even philosophical disputes. It is pure politics. That is, who has more authority and power? The patriarch, the super archbishop, the super bishop of Constantinople, or the super archbishop, the bishop, the pope of Rome. What happens is, in the year 1054, the Pope here in Rome sends a legate, an emissary, an ambassador, by the name of Cardinal Humbert. I think it sounds better in French, Humbert, to Constantinople to bring up charges of heresy against the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Emperor, now the Byzantine Emperor we call it, of Constantinople, the former Eastern Roman Empire, of heresy due to their prevention of the use and incorporation of the Filioque Clause during the recitation of the Creed, during the liturgy, the Eucharist, the Mass. And as only Hollywood could only dream to write a better script. It sounds like something out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. During the during the Sunday liturgy in Constantinople, in the cathedral church there, the patriarchal basilica of Hagia Sophia, Cardinal Humbert and his delegation, his entourage, march while the Mass is going on, the Eucharist is going on. They march up the main aisle of Hagia Sophia, and while the Patriarch of Constantinople is about to confect the Eucharist, is about to consecrate the host, slams down on the altar the papal bull of excommunication. And aside, bull, B-U-L-L. Not as in bull or bullshit, well, that remains to be seen, but bull from the Latin term bolla, bolum, meaning a seal, an authoritative seal from the executive authority and power, in this case the Pope, who is also, again, Pontifex Maximus. He slams down on the altar during Mass, think about that, this papal bull of excommunication against the Patriarch of Constantinople, who's doing the Mass, celebrating the Mass, the Eucharist, and the Emperor, the Byzantine Emperor, because they are they have enacted a prohibition against the use of this clause, the Filioque Clause, during the recitation of the Creed in the Western Latin-speaking churches which happen to exist in the former Eastern Roman Empire at this point. Boom. You're excommunio, out of communion. You're excommunicated. We've already gone over what that means in previous lectures. To which, you can't write this, you can't make this up. The Patriarch interrupts himself as he's celebrating the Eucharist and basically says, fuck me, fuck you. I'm excommunicating you. And the use of those, I guess, vulgar terms is not gratuitous, but it's to emphasize the point, because that's exactly, when you heard that, that's exactly what was immediately felt and experienced in this exchange, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better word. The Patriarch of Constantinople says, no, I'm excommunicating you, the boat you rode in on, and your Pope that sent you. That grave. That's serious. Remember, these are not just religious matters. We have politics and economics involved here. Not to mention the threat of the Islamic Caliphate from the Christian perspective and order of society on the outside. Well, to make a long story short, this double excommunication, if you're looking at your worksheet, the notes, this double excommunication. So Cardinal Humbert, on the part of the Pope, excommunicates the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Emperor of Constantinople, the Byzantine Emperor. The Patriarch of Constantinople, for his part, excommunicates Cardinal Humbert, his entourage, and the Pope. We call this a double excommunication. Technically, almost immediately following this, both sides agreed that all bets were off. It was null and void on both of counts. Why? Well, because unbeknownst to Cardinal Humbert, as he was on his boat from Rome to Constantinople, the Pope here in Rome dropped dead. And because of that, the bull, the papal bull of excommunication Cardinal Humbert was bearing, was null and void. So even though he did this, arguably sacrilegiously, not to mention undiplomatically and unceremoniously, it was null and void. It had no bearing because of legalities. On the part of the Patriarch of Constantinople and the Holy Roman Emperor, or excuse me, not the Holy Roman Emperor, the Emperor of Constantinople, the Byzantine Emperor, they, in reply, said, well, we didn't actually excommunicate those Christians in the Latin-speaking West, much less your Pope, just you, Cardinal Humbert, and your entourage, for the very least, among other things, this great sacrilege. So, on paper, diplomatically, we're okay, right? No, because it was a grassroots movement at this point. There were too many partisans, we say today, people who took sides. Again, not really for religious reasons, but primarily for political and economic reasons. Who's right? Who's wrong? So, to be accurate, precise, technically, this double excommunication was at the time recognized as being null and void, practically speaking, and as later history, down to our own day, would play out. Didn't matter. It was a rupture, or as they say in Greek, a schisma, a schism, schism, S-C-H-I-S-M, a rupture, a break. For the first time in a millennium, in 1,000 years, of this oneness of the worldwide political assembly of Christ. This oneness of the Catholic Church. The year 1054, the Great Schism. One church is now two. This would eventually lead to the Eastern Orthodox Church in the East, which at this time is still headquartered, if you will, in Constantinople. But following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, that focus, that center will move initially to Kiev in modern Ukraine, and eventually to the see in Moscow in Russia. So if you ever wondered why is it the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, all these Eastern Orthodox churches, this is where it begins. And again, for the purposes of our course, we unfortunately do not have time to get into all the details. Very interesting about that. So we'll just leave it there. Suffice to say, 1054, the Great Schism. Now, the one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church, this oneness of the worldwide political assembly of Christ, after 1,000 years, is now two. That brings us to point 3 in your worksheets, where we leave the Dark Ages. So the Dark Ages end when Charlemagne is crowned Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day in the year 800 in St. Peter's Basilica. End of the Dark Ages specifically as such, and into the proper medieval period, the Middle Ages. And the greatest institution, really, that the medieval period as such, the Middle Ages produced, going off of the previous monasteries, Benedictine monastic tradition, the reintroduction of the classical schola, that is the universitas. They invented the term intentionally, university. In Latin, universitas. What does this word mean? Once again, going back to our first hermeneutic, the philological, understanding what a word means will help us a great deal in understanding a lot more. So, universitas, what is in a word? Well, there's actually 4 words in this term, universitas. 1, vers, versus, versa. Like versus, like, I don't know, football team A versus football team B. Versus. Well, we usually think in English that means against. Well, it does in Latin. It also means toward, which is what an adversary is. You're moving towards your adversary, or you're engaging your adversary, but towards. So that's the first word contained in this newly minted, coined term, universitas, in the medieval period. Towards something, vers. Point number 2, towards what? Unitas. Ooh, remember that? 3rd century, unitas. I know you're sick to death of hearing about unitas, but as you see, it comes up again. Unitas. Oneness. Towards the oneness of something. The oneness of what? 3rd word. Univers, universus, universa, universe, universal. The universitas is something that is moving towards one universal what? 4th point, veritas, truth. An institution set up, designed, programmed to move towards one universal truth. The university. Again, an outgrowth of the early medieval monastic schola system for the eventual rebooting of human civilization, of society, to pick up where the ancient Romans left off. And it is no mistake that the very first universitas, the very first university, would be established in the year 1088 in the city of Bologna. It's the oldest continuously surviving university in the world today. It still exists, the University of Bologna, which was the northernmost major city in the territory of the Papal States. So who runs this universitas, this university? The Pope. By 1365, with the foundation of my alma mater, where I was gifted, rewarded my own Dr. Phil, or PhD, the Universität Wien, the Vienna University of Vienna, 1365, which at the time in 1365 was basically the capital of the Holy Roman Empire. So, by 1365, we're still in the medieval period, every now emerging nation state in Europe has at least one university. A place to do what? Well, a place to prepare the future elites of tomorrow. Those who are going to, pardon my cough, run society for the rest of human beings. Again, we're rebooting society. We want to prepare the future of tomorrow to do that. So what faculties, what disciplines, what areas of engagement would you think are important in such an endeavor? Gender studies? No. Communications courses where you watch Pink Floyd videos and write incomprehensible essays? No. Again, don't think idealistically. Think very practically, pragmatically, and cynically, always. This is the Pope's university. I'm the Pope. I'm creating the system for the future. I'm creating the framework, the box, the labyrinth, the maze. And therefore, it needs to run as I think most appropriate, most beneficial to me. Yes, of course, to the rest of human society. I'm not stupid, because we're all in this together, brother, right? But it needs to be controlled. How do we do that? Well, we're creating a system, we're creating a box, a maze, a labyrinth, walls. In other words, we're creating laws. And so the first faculty that will be introduced in 1088 in the university system is the faculty of law. And if you successfully complete that, you will become a doctor juris. If you're looking at taking notes on the worksheet, doctor juris, a practitioner, a doctor, a practitioner of justice, of the law, which, just as an aside, I have written here, not a JD. A JD is like a master's degree. The equivalent, as far as a PhD or a doctoral degree, is a doctor jur, which still exists today, unbeknownst to apparently most people. Okay. Secondly, what next faculty? We got 4. We finished 1, law. What's the next one you want to do? Remember, whose university is this? Whose system is this? Whose reality, labyrinth, maze? Who's creating all this? The Pope. Okay, so how do we justify these human-made laws? God. And therefore, the next faculty which will be introduced is the faculty of theology. Again, looking at your worksheet, if you become a practitioner of that, are known as a Doctor Theologiae, Doctor of Theology. Today, just as an aside, in the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church's system, the pontifical system, referred to as a Sacrae Theologiae Doctor, right? Abbreviated STD. A lot of priests come to Rome and pick up an STD. No, you little gutter balls, not what you're thinking. That is, you get a doctorate in sacred theology. Okay, so we need to explain theologically, by God's law, divine law, why and how these human laws are legitimate. So that's the second faculty introduced. Theology. At the same time, and those in the medieval course will do a separate lecture session on this. At the same time, in the medieval period, not just in the Roman Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church now, Christianity, but also in Judaism and Islam, many thinkers are realizing, you know what, we're running out of room here in trying to justify these human laws with theological concepts. Maybe we should try to do this based on reason alone. That is not divinely revealed religion, but just on reason. Consequently, the third discipline, faculty introduced, namely Doctor Philosophiae, a doctor, a practitioner of philosophy, which used to be referred to as, hence the abbreviation after my name. If you've ever wondered that, it's not because I'm trying to emulate Oprah Winfrey's friend, Dr. Phil. What is your problem? Well, apart from whatever my problem is. So, Dr. Phil, then in the UK, the English system, becomes DPhil, in the American system, PhD. Okay. Finally, well, we're all into God. We cannot wait to live forever with Jesus, right? But some of us are not quite ready yet, especially those of us who are in power and have money and a very nice quality of life. So maybe I should preserve that quality of life, postpone my inevitable meeting with Jesus. Maybe I should introduce the faculty of those who will become a doctor medicinae, a practitioner, a doctor of medicine. Dr. Med, MD. And that's it. Those would wind up being the standard faculties in any university anywhere in the world, pretty much up until the time of not even Isaac Newton, at least 18th century, arguably the 19th century. That's it. That's all that's going on. Well, kind of in closing, the last point here on your worksheets. Someone has to stay behind in the universitas, the university, to continue to prepare the future elites, leaders, movers and shakers of the future. Who is going to do that? Well, in the medieval period, it was called what the ancient Romans called it, the magister, the magistrate. You would say university professor. However, this time, they were a bit more clever than the ancient Romans were. Notwithstanding the agentes in rebus, the agents and things we also talked about when we discussed the 3rd century. But who's going to make sure? I'm the Pope. Think about this. I'm the Pope. I want to make sure that my magistres, right, my professors, are not infecting or polluting the minds, the impressionable minds of students. I want to make sure they're learning what they should be learning, what I want them to be learning. How do I do that? Maybe I should come up with a board of advisors, a board of trustees, a supervisory committee, an administrative committee that can monitor these things. And that's exactly what they do. You know what they call it? They call it the Office of the Inquisition. The Office of the Inquisition. to make sure that those in authorized positions to impart learning, knowledge, presumably, though that's become a farce, obviously, in recent years, according to what they want one to be learning. As always, my dearest students, I hope none of this irony, it's much more than irony. I hope none of this is lost on you and you are always applying these things to what's going on right here and now. So with that, again, stay safe, stay healthy. Even from the depths of my cold, dead heart, I love each and every one of you equally. Okay? So, until the next time.